I think I can get away with saying that Mega Man 5 is the most hated game within the classic series. From what I've seen / heard myself, it seems like most people generally consider 5 to be the weakest entry, calling it boring, bland, mindless, and lacking its own identity. Well, wait, let me stop you right there. Those other 3 points about how it's boring, bland, whatever, that's ultimately up to personal taste. But that last point always gets me because it's true. Mega Man 5 as a standalone entry is a very lackluster sequel for that very reason, and coming off the heels of Mega Man 3 and 4, games that push the series in an exciting new direction, Mega Man 5 can seem like not necessarily a step down, but not a step at all. However, I do not think that Mega Man 5 is the weakest game in the series because of that. In fact, I'd actually argue the contrary. Mega Man 5 has some pretty strong design elements that I hope to make more clear within this video, because in my eyes, a bad sequel does not equate to a bad game. Let's take a deeper look to see what I actually mean. This is Mega Man 5 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This time, the story is centered all around Proto Man, whereas seemingly out of the blue, Proto Man kidnaps Light and sends 8 Robot Masters out to stop you in your quest to save him. To be honest for a second, these are some of the most pathetic and forgettable Robot Masters in the entire series. I mean, Stone Man, Gyro Man, Star Man, like what? Where do you find these things? But that aside, this is a pretty basic premise, and I'm still a huge fan of how they're portraying Proto Man in these games. One second he's on your side, the next he isn't. It really makes you question which side he's truly on. Mega Man himself is largely unchanged from Mega Man 4, however he has gained 3 massive upgrades. The first of which is a much more powerful Mega Buster. It's a lot larger now, covering a lot more ground, and as a result, it becomes a lot more fun to use. Also, Mega Man here also has a cooler charge-up animation, which is also definitely a plus. The second major addition being Beat, a robot bird sent from Dr. Cossack to apologize for the hardships he gave you in the last game. Now, from face value, Beat doesn't really look to do anything all that interesting, but when equipped, he attacks enemies that are close by. This may not sound all too exciting, but when faced up against bosses, Beat becomes a lifesaver. And the third being an upgraded version of the E-Tank, known as the M-Tanks. It's incredibly rare to find them, but if you do manage to get your hands on one, it can refill both your health and your weapons, a much more useful substitute for the Ishichi in my opinion. On top of those, you also have the new weapons, and again, they're not that great. Actually, I'd probably argue that these have to be the worst set of weapons in the classic series thus far. Super situational, very annoying to use during actual gameplay, and some of them barely work even when you're going against a boss that's weak to. They're just not good. Man, I really feel like I've been a bit harsh on a game that I said that I really liked. So how about we change that and talk about this game's fantastic level design. Of the classic games that I've played up until this point, this game has the least amount of annoying design elements by a long shot. Everything is placed in a fair and balanced way too, nothing ever really comes off as cheap. But the levels are just really cool in general, and play around with some very creative level themes. Wave Man has really clever set pieces as well as a boat shooting section that has an entire mini boss designed around it, and Starman has this huge space facility with a zero gravity gimmick that, for once, is actually fun to play around. And by far the best level in the game, Gravity Man, has you dealing with anti-gravity via these panels in the background, being the most interesting and engaging level in the entire classic series so far. And if all that wasn't enough, let's talk about Beat again, but more specifically how you get Beat. Throughout all of the 8 main stages, there are these random tokens with letters on them that spell out Mega Man 5. Collect them all, and the blue weapon of mass destruction is now yours. These tokens are placed in some very obtuse places that really test you with how well you can maneuver through the gimmick that the stage is built around. Like guys, this game is good. This game also looks fantastic given the hardware. Gone are the flat and boring backgrounds of Mega Man 4, here each level is very colorful and vibrant and it's just a lot more visually pleasing. I'd probably consider 5 to be my favorite looking Mega Man game on the NES. Unfortunately, I can't say the same thing for the soundtrack, but it's not bad in the slightest. I just find that it has a radically different vibe compared to the previous games. It's a lot more mellow and chill, and the tempos are a lot more slower paced and less chaotically frantic. Others are welcome to disagree, but I think this approach works totally fine. It gives the game a very laid-back, relaxing feeling that's very hard to find in any of the other installments. It's perfect music to listen to while you're doing homework and studying, as opposed to... Well, we've reached that point in the video again. Now, similar to the last two games, after all 8 Robot Masters are defeated, you have to fight an alternative fortress stage before you can go out to Wily. And as for these Proto fortress stages, this is where the game hits a huge difficulty spike. The things these stages expect you to do is quite difficult, and coming off the 8 main stages, which are relatively easy, this comes off as more of a slap in the face rather than a proper test of skill. After that, you face off against one of the Dark Men, good job guys, and the final of which is actually Proto Man? And a weird version of his theme plays? No, wait, the real Proto Man shows up, hits him, and then the real Dark Man shows himself. And after Beat deals with him, Wily shows up and says Dr. Light is at his castle. Can you tell how shocked I am by the sound of my voice? Now, the Wily stages are still where the game spikes. I mean, stuff like this happens. Ow. But, I don't know, they just come off as very boring and bland. I'm seeing the same factories over and over and over again, and it's a far cry from what the aesthetics were elsewhere in the game. The bosses are really cool though, and have creative attack patterns, so I guess that fixes everything. Now, no. Anyways, we get to Wily. Mega Man takes out his first phase, Beat goes after his second, Mega Man lands the final blow, and... Whoa! He can do that! so much for the power arm, am I right? I also like to point out that even though Proto Man shot a path for them to escape through, the ceiling just stays in place. That's not how gravity works. The building collapses, we see Wily escape again, and that's all she wrote. Now, back to what I said at the beginning. Yes, Mega Man 5 is indeed a lackluster sequel, that's a true statement. But when I take a closer look at it, I don't really feel the need to care. This is probably the most well-rounded game of the NES saga up until this point, and even though I do personally prefer 2 and 3, I'd argue that this is objectively the best game in the series at that point in time. The fantastic level design, the different approach to music, just the sheer simplicity and straightforwardness all goes a long way to making this game a fun and enjoyable experience. It's a fun game, and hopefully I've proved to you in this video that a Mega Man game doesn't have to reinvent the wheel in order to be fun. Now, obviously, the game isn't without its faults, and they still do show up, particularly during the end game. And, I mean, I guess the game could be the slightest bit more challenging, but notice how none of those things have anything to do with the "this game has nothing unique about it" argument. It has the same problems every Mega Man game has had and will continue to have, and that's fine, because in my eyes, a bad sequel doesn't, hasn't, and will never equate to a bad video game.